this can seem like a very like contradicting topic to people that have been saved for years and have been and are dealing with mental warfare or depression or anything along those lines. I know I can say this for me. I grew up in the church, and one of the things that I believe that we kind of learn is you're saved, so therefore, you're saved, so therefore, you know, you decree your healing, you proclaim your healing. You didn't really hear people talking much about depression in the church, and I don't think you really hear, at least where I am, I don't hear a lot of it now. Now, I do hear about anxiety a little bit here and there, and things of that nature. And I want to dig into that too. But dealing with warfare of any kind is serious. Mental warfare of any kind is serious. And so I have some points here just to help keep me on topic, because I know sometimes my mind can go to something else, or if something else drops in my mind, I remember to say something else, I may get off track. So for me, in my personal journey, imagine having your child and not remembering the first year of his life on earth. For me, I realized that towards the end of last year, 2022. And for those of you that don't know, I went through a lot. I have another video on this page about our testimony in regards to my birthing story. And so that's there. But I really started to seek God, because there were like moments and things that I was going through where I realized like I wasn't remembering a lot of last year. I very rarely remember 2021. My son was born in September of 2021. And so I started to really kind of go down this road of like believing in the life that I was pretending to live. And what I mean by that is depression can look different for everyone. For me, I prayed before I had my child. I prayed while I was pregnant with my child. I prayed after I was pregnant with my child against postpartum depression. I didn't want it. I knew that I had already dealt with and kind of gone through depression at different stages of my life. I had already done it when I had already gone through depression when I was younger. I had already dealt with it when I was a teenager. I dealt with it in my 20s, and then I dealt with it again here in my 30s. And so I really started to get down on myself. But even in praying about that, I started to realize that it was triggered by traumatic experiences and traumatic situations. And so it kind of it felt like it hit me slowly. It came slowly. But once it did settle into my life, and I kept disregarding it, and I kept pushing it aside, and I kept pretending that everything was okay. I was a great pretender at smiling at everything and planning my son's birthday party and doing all of these great things. But I quickly realized that I was heading down the path of a slippery slope, and I did not know how to get myself out of it. And not only did I feel like I lost myself in this journey of depression, but I felt like I wasn't present even in my own body, even in the own life that I was living. I was carrying out daily tasks, as far as cleaning, taking care of my child, taking care of my family. But I noticed that my self-care wasn't top tier or where it used to be. I noticed that I did the bare minimum. There were times where I would do my hair and I would not touch my hair again for like a month afterwards. And for some people, they're like, okay, but for me, that was a huge deal. I noticed it, and I tried to grasp where it started. But in all honesty, I feel like I was kind of already heading down this path even in my pregnancy. I know that one of the things that tries to attach itself to a lot of women when they're pregnant is the feeling of being alone or abandoned. And I tried to be careful of the words that I spoke while I was pregnant, but those were feelings that I was deeply feeling. And I did not convey that to my husband. My husband is very much so a man who is going to get things done. He is a great husband, a wonderful father. So it's no disregard to him. I'm not throwing him under the bus or anything. But I did feel lonely for a season during my pregnancy. And because I did not address that, it's like things continued to pile on top of one another, pile and pile and pile. And eventually, towards the end of last year, I look back and I'm like, okay, I remember planning my son's birthday party, but like, I really wasn't here. It's as if like I was floating through my own life. And literally the life I was pretending to have, like pretending to be happy, pretending to be okay, pretending to be this bubbly person, wanting to reach out and create friendships and have all of these things, which are great things to desire. But I realized that I was getting to a place of believing in what I was pretending and what I was portraying. And so, as I told you, the end of last year, a lot of it came tumbling down. And this is why. I knew that I was good at hiding in plain sight. My family, you know, they didn't know, but I know there were times where we had conversations during services where I literally opened up and I told them, you know, I know postpartum depression is trying to attach itself to me. So I was requesting for prayer and just being as transparent as I could. And God quickly began to tell me, I believe the Spirit of the Lord was leading me to start being more transparent with him. It had been so long since I cried. It had been so long since I prayed and just talked to God. I didn't have to create these fancy words. I didn't have to have everything together, but literally just pouring out to God everything that I had within me. And one night, what I did was I sat in my tub. It was a dream. I had a dream of something, and it was a very traumatic experience that I was brought back to. And I had this dream, and immediately compassion started to fill my heart regarding the situation. And I wanted to be careful, but anger also started to set in. And so I wanted to be careful as to how I dealt with the situation, and emotions were getting heightened and so much was going on. And as I told you, I was already going through depression. And so I just felt like I was so weighted down, and I did not know how to climb out of where I was. I felt like I was just in this pit of despair, and I didn't know where to go. And so as I began to talk things out to my husband, I just told him I just need to go pray. And so I think me and him had kind of got into like a little bit of a tiff, a little bit of an argument, hit a rough spot. But I knew that it was me reacting out of my emotions towards what I was going through. So I hope I'm on track here and you guys are following along. But long story short, I found myself in a place where I had no choice but to lean on God. And so I took a bath. And one thing that I know is to put some blessed oil in your bathtub, pray over yourself. I've done that in my past. Whenever I've gone to the doctor and they've tried to tell me something negative, I'm quick to put that oil in the tub, blessed oil in the tub, and pray. And so as I sat in the bathtub, I started to really pour out to God in a way that I hadn't before. And I told God, like, I don't understand why you allowed me to have this dream. I don't understand if it's you or if it's the enemy, but whatever it is, I'm not receiving what's trying to attach itself to me. But then it's like, okay, get out of the churchy mentality and actually talk to God about your emotions. Actually talk to him from the place where you are. And as I began to pour out and just really be raw in my emotions and in my state of living with God, he began to tell me immediately. I heard the Spirit say, I am not them, I am not they. And God not only corrected me about himself, but he then said, neither is your husband. And I began to weep. I began to weep because what God was dealing with was not just the dream, not just those traumatic experiences, but things dating back to my childhood that I never addressed. Things that I was waiting on people to apologize to me about that I had never addressed. And so what God was showing me was throughout your journey of life, ever since I got married and connected myself to my husband, I'm telling you, the mirror has been flipped on me to where God has been doing like this inside out kind of work, where it's like, listen, the way that you respond to people in this area, the way that you treat your husband, the way that you treat yourself, the way that you treat your son, the way that you deal with situations, the way that you are governed and guided by your emotions versus the spirit of the living God, we have to change some things around, because the way that you're going is not beneficial to your true healing. And this is where it begins, because I want you to deal with it. But what we're talking about is productivity here. And that's what it boils down to. That's what I began to even hear now. And so when you're talking about the productivity of something, you're talking about the efficiency of having the ability to produce. And that word produce means make or manufacture from components of raw materials. So understand that your going through is not in vain. Things that we have experienced in this life is not in vain. It serves a purpose. Know that your productivity, know that what you have the ability to produce in life, it's by the things you go through. So when you are dealing with depression, when you are dealing with mental warfare, if yours isn't as bad as mine or worse than mine, or you feel like you were in that place at one point in time as well, even if you are in a position where maybe you felt like you didn't want to be here, I dare you to ask God to remind you of who you are. Because there have been so many times where I've had to sit down before God and really absorb what he's saying. Okay. And sometimes, well, how do you hear the voice of the Lord? The best thing that I can say is make yourself available, make room for him to be able to talk to you. But I would talk to my husband. I would talk to my sister. I would talk to my mother, and they gave great advice. But it wasn't until I sat before God in that tub that things began to break. And it wasn't overnight, but I had to address my imperfections and renounce depression. I had to say it out of my mouth, because all this time I've been like, I'm saved. I'm not going to have that. I decree, I declare, I'm not going to have depression. I decree, I declare, I am not going to go through this. I am not going to have, this is not going to attach itself to my life. And I continued to say that. And I believed it. I believed it until I found myself in it. And so God began to show me, like, it's not enough to just say things, but you have to be in communion with me so that I can keep you in preparation for what's coming your way. Because understand, all the enemy needs is a little break in the hedge to come through. All he needs is a little thought. For me, feelings of loneliness, feelings of insecurities that I had been carrying for a while, that was the door. That was the entryway. So finding the entryway, but then being able to speak that thing and renounce it. I had to renounce postpartum depression and as a whole, and mental warfare. I had to renounce those things. After that, I began to have dreams, more and more dreams of just things that I needed to confront. And I found myself starting to become more consistent in reading my word, starting to become more consistent with making sure that I'm praying and talking to God. It's not about sitting here and saying, okay, this is my list, but sometimes really coming before God to just say, I thank you, and I just want to hear from you today. I don't have the words to say, God. I don't know where to pull these words from, because there were a lot of prayers that were just like that. There were moments where all I could do was sit and cry. But then God began to show me, no, worship me through your gifts. And so God began to tell me, sing to me how you're feeling. And I guarantee you those words are going to flip to you speaking prophetically over your life. Words of healing over your life. And so I began to do just that. Now I can say that I actually feel like I'm living again. Now I can say that I can actually formulate a plan in my mind of how I would like my day to go. Now I have the energy to be there and be present in the moment with my son. It's been a journey, but I don't want you to think that and I said this in a post earlier today, just because we're saved does not mean that we are exempt. Come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Just that part alone. Come to me. Come to who? Come to God. If you're feeling weary, know that he has rest for you. And then it says, take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. Here's the thing that I've learned over time. We will not be content in this life. We will not be satisfied in our soul until we are completely in the will of God. It just is what it is. We'll forever be searching. We'll forever be looking. We'll forever feel like there's a piece that's just missing until we do what we were created to do and be. And I'm not just saying with the busyness of our hands, being busybodies out here, work, but I'm saying actually having relationship with God. So I want you guys to remember that God's intentions for us are not to harm us, they're not to hurt us, but they're to bring us to that expected end. And so understand that all of this is intentional. It's a part of the journey. And when we get to the other side of the testimony, the way that I look at it is like, right now I have this land, I have this space, I have the jurisdiction over this territory. But the more that I conquer, the more that I overcome, the more warfare that I endure and come out of, not to say that I'm wanting that, but to say like every time I get on the opposite side of that wall, the other side of my testimony, that just expanded my territory even more. Now I have jurisdiction over more things. Now God can trust me with more. Now I can reach more people. Now I can say, look, I've gone through depression and I went through so much so that I lied myself into a pit. I pretended myself into a pit. But God saved me.